Axel Rudakabana was known to authorities before he murdered those children. Should the Prime Minister of Britain resign? Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining me. Remember, our primary shows are on Rumble Monday to Thursday. We do a brilliant new show with Neil Oliver and Lara Logan. And it was Lara Logan who led me to question the casual use of the term grooming gangs for what should rightly be called rape gangs. And that's just one of the crises consuming the United Kingdom right now. We have the bizarre spectacle of people being imprisoned for stuff they've said online, albeit in some cases some pretty unpleasant stuff. But once you start jailing people for things that they say on the internet, you're entering into some sort of judicial thunderdome in the holy name of compassion. And I use the term holy deliberately because, like most globalists, there is a claim to moral authority coming out of the UK government that seems uncustomarily certain, particularly given the observable incompetence. At the time of the murder of those 3 children in Southport, it was a terrible, 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 dreadful murder. The identity of the suspected killer was, of course, kept secret. Some people made posts that were inaccurate at the time. People like Piers Morgan were talking about it. Andrew Tate was talking about it. There was a lot of concern that it would be a migrant that had just arrived that had committed these murders. I suppose if one thing makes the death of your 8-year-old child worse, it would be learning that your child was murdered by someone that oughtn't be here. Although I think once you've lost a child to murder, Lord alone knows what world you occupy then and how you find your way back to God. But surely that's what you must do. What we're experiencing and encountering, it seems, is the mismanagement of this horrific case. And indeed, there are aspects of this case that shine an unusual light on many other judicial matters in the United Kingdom, notably the ludicrously named grooming gangs that ought to be called rape gangs, the incarceration of Tommy Robinson, ostensibly on the basis of subjudicial reporting about a grooming gangs matter, and what you get in conglomeration is ultimately a Britain where it seems that Keir Starmer won't be able to remain Prime Minister for very much longer, and an establishment media would probably be backing that and helping to facilitate that were it not for the fear of Nigel Farage, Britain's popular and populist equivalent of Donald Trump. Let's have a look at Farage's opinion on the Axel Rudakabana matter before examining some of the missteps and mistakes that the UK's fast-falling Prime Minister and inept government appear to have made.
In the wake of that horrendous murder of those 3 girls in Southport last summer, just 24 hours afterwards, there was a huge amount of speculation about who the suspected murderer was. I put out this video and I asked this basic question. I have to say there are 1 or 2 questions. Was this guy being monitored by the security services? Some reports say he was, others less sure. I just wonder whether the truth is being withheld from us. I don't know the answer to that, but I think it is a fair and legitimate question.
It's a kind of clip that makes Nigel Farage's position as Prime Minister in waiting a little more tenable, surely even for his detractors, and even who actually supports the Labour Party in the United Kingdom when they have abandoned ordinary working people, when they brought down one of the few good leaders they've had in the last half century, or at least one of the few anti-globalist leaders they've had in the last half century. Who can believe that they're anything other than bureaucratically managing decline in the United Kingdom, obfuscating terrible crimes like the rape gangs that are exploiting and abusing our children, while simultaneously imprisoning people who might not be, to use a British aphorism, everyone's cup of tea, but are potentially being imprisoned not on the basis of their own actions, in the case of Tommy Robinson, subjudiciary mortgage fraud, travelling on a dodgy passport, all things that are obviously crimes, but somewhat pale in significance when you consider the crime of institutionalised rape across an entire country. I've experienced some pretty astonishing things in the United Kingdom myself when it comes to judicial and media matters, stuff teetering on the very brink of subjudicial reporting, I would contest myself. But I'll put aside my personal feelings about the corruption of the British media, the British government for a moment, because this is far, far more important than that. This is how initially the British establishment presented Axel Rudakabana. Boy 17 accused of murdering 3 girls in Southport attack is a quiet boy who is unwilling to leave the house.
A quiet boy!
Well, also his surname, Ruda Cabana, sounds a bit like Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna Matata!
But that doesn't mean that this isn't an incredibly brutal crime. And if he was under surveillance from state agencies who, on rare occasions, appear to be using their power to observe people who are a threat to the people rather than a threat to the establishment, maybe something significant could have been done earlier rather than focusing on what Andrew Tate is posting or what people are saying when understandably outraged and incensed about what they might hypothetically do online. Maybe it's more important to identify and control a threat to children that appears to be pervasive. In this instance, a brutal murder, but institutionally almost, it seems, the rape of young girls. What's going on in the United Kingdom? Of course, Keir Starmer's claim is that he could have jeopardised the trial with any revelation of details. But is it possible to discuss what amounted to a national crisis without revealing crucial details? I would say it is, and certainly I've personally experienced in the UK extremely condemnatory reporting that seemed to demonstrate an alliance between British media organisations and potentially organisations and agencies beyond that, including potentially government, it has been alleged. So all of a sudden, Keir Starmer's very interested in the matter of sub-judiciary or the potential for contempt of court or clumsy reporting to jeopardise a trial. Is that what's going on here, or is something far worse going on? It certainly seems, in the broader context of who's going to jail and who isn't, and what's going on that isn't being properly analysed, scrutinised and observed, that potentially something much worse is happening in the UK below the surface. For a long time in British government, there were rumours about Dolphin Square, never fully confirmed, but that appeared to indicate widespread exploitation of children within the care system. Here, journalists claim that there were multiple opportunities to tell the public the truth in a way that would have not made the case fall apart. Let's have a look.
Can I have Paul Brand, please, from ITV?
Paul Brand from ITV. Thank you, Prime Minister. All of us, as you say, as journalists, understand the risk of contempt of court, of prejudicing a trial, but we live in a different age now, don't we, where misinformation and disinformation spreads at lightning speed online.
See, like a legacy media journalist almost has to tag government points when asking a question to the Prime Minister. We all know that misinformation and disinformation is terrible. Why? Because the legacy media's agenda and the government's agenda in that instance align. The legacy media don't want independent media to thrive, so they're very happy to raise the idea that there's only one or two sources of information that you can rely on. In short, the old school legacy media, members of the Trusted News Initiative that includes YouTube, the BBC. So there, the interests of that journalist align with the interests of Keir Starmer. We all know there's a threat of misinformation and disinformation. Well done, yes, and therefore we need further censorship, and therefore we need to shut down independent media, and therefore if there are any opposing voices that present alternative narratives, they should be shut down by what? Well, I suppose any means. We should just find some way, even if it's not true, of shutting them down. New Year's Eve is on its way. We're all making resolutions and looking for new solutions, but what about our pets? And what about rough greens? Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black is on a mission to provide better nutrition for cats and dogs because, truthfully, it's not what you are feeding your pet, it's what you're not. What are you not feeding your pet? Which is why he created Rough Greens and Meow Greens in the first place. Bring their dead food back to life with live vitamins and minerals and probiotics, enzymes, omega oils, antioxidants, and so much more. All in their tasty formula your dog or cat will love. Improve your pet's coat, digestion and energy and have less vet bills. Let 2025 bring a new year and a new pet. Try it. Get a Jumpstart trial bag, normally $20, with free promo code Russell just to cover shipping. Resolve to provide what your pet's food has been missing with Rough Greens. To get your free Jumpstart trial bag, go to roughgreens.com. Use the promo code Russell. That's RUFFgreens.com, promo code Russell. So good your pet will ask for it for name. I love my pets. My little Coco, a Dachshund, my beautiful bear, a German Shepherd. Both German dogs. What does it mean? What does it all mean? I give them Rough Greens. And going into the new year, I'm going to be giving them Rough Greens and getting a great deal from Rough Greens. The greens may be rough, but the deal ain't.
I was in Southport on the day of the attacks. There was a short window in which information could have been released before charge, before any risk of prejudicing a trial. Why didn't you do that? And do you think it was a mistake not to provide that detail then?
Firstly, let me address part of your...
Prime Minister, sorry to labour this point, but I think it's important. All summer we were repeatedly told that the Stockport attack was not terror-related, it wasn't being treated as terror-related. That wasn't true. Because in October, this monster was charged with a terror offence. Now, information was put into the public domain then that didn't collapse the trial. It didn't jeopardise justice. It was just months later.
We didn't tell you that information in order to help you. Did you think we were trying to help us? No, we're trying to help you. We're the government. We're here to help you. Don't you remember Ronald Reagan's phrase that the best thing you could ever hear, the 9 words that all of us crave hearing is, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Let me know in the comments and chat what he actually said. You, once again, have to enter into some sort of weird delusional world where you believe that it is the function of government to help you and that their decisions are motivated by desire to assist you, whether that's during the pandemic, keeping you safe and healthy, during wars, funneling your money into wars that are, frankly, none of your business and none of your concern. They're here to help you. And when they want to control misinformation, that's to help you as well. It's not because, I don't know, for example, off the top of my head, that some of the information, if you were given it plainly, would make you non-compliant and disobedient and would make you never trust the government again. But not only government, sets of commercial, corporate and state interests that have been controlling the world, we know now, for a long, long while, always claiming again and again that they're here to help you. Now we have access to information because all of us have access to brilliant independent media journalists, whether that's from the left on Grey Zone or from the right with someone like Tucker Carlson. We're all hearing a wide variety of opinions. How do you legitimately shut that down? You can't legitimately shut that down unless you claim that misinformation, the fact that human beings in any forum say stuff that's not true sometimes, either by mistake or by design, could be used to control who? All media, because, you know, Rachel Maddow, has she been done for misinformation for the get one shot, it stops with you? Or does a vague law and vague categories like misinformation and disinformation allow whoever is in power to deploy those laws however they see fit? When you have a vague law, you choose who to prosecute and who to control. As that great friend to freedom, Joe Stalin, always used to say, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. We will find a way of controlling you. We will either control you because you are lying or you're racist or you're a rapist, and if you're not those things, you better believe we'll find a way of making you look like those things if we need to control you. Because when you look at this case, it doesn't make sense, does it? People were saying, is this a terrorist attack? Is this somehow motivated by ideologies that are outside of Britain? Yeah, it is, isn't it, a little bit? Even though this is someone that was born in our beautiful country, the United Kingdom, it was someone who clearly had ideological ties that were not connected to the myths and mythos of the United Kingdom and Britain. And are there any other stories where in order to protect multiculturalism, we're not getting accurate reporting? Yeah, there are, aren't there? There are the rape gang stories. And it seems that potentially also people are being jailed or shut down or smeared or destroyed because they are willing to talk about subjects that the British government and their client interests, whether that's Big Pharma, Moderna, Pfizer, or military-industrial complex interests, don't want spoken about. So tell me, do you believe that when they control information, they're doing that for you or for them? Let me know in the comments and chat.
Now, you say you knew about the ricin and the Al-Qaeda bomb manual and it was known to the authorities. Did you know about that personally? At the same time, the public, the press, and you and the police were saying this is not terror related, because I think that's the nub of the issue and that's what's upset people. You say you couldn't speak out publicly, that you couldn't do that, but didn't the public have a right to know, not least the neighbours who had ricin being produced on their street? Surely they had a right to know.
Well, I think there are two separate and important issues there, Harry. The first is on the question of terrorism and what constitutes terrorism.
Yeah, that's what we're all thinking. None of us are thinking, do you sometimes withhold information because it would make us not trust you? Is that what's going on? Are there strange connections between these rape gangs and the rumours that have always surrounded members of the government? Are there areas that ought to be investigated? Do you find it interesting or intriguing or fascinating that an inquiry into those, I'm not calling them grooming gangs since I spoke to Lara Logan about it on my show. You can see it every Thursday. When we spoke about that, she said, don't call them grooming gangs. That diminishes it. These are rape gangs. Why would you not have an inquiry into that, as that famous meme said? But why don't you have an inquiry? It would exonerate you. It would exonerate you, right? It seems that rather than deal with the cultural crisis that's happening in the UK, like many centralised figures desperate to prevent nationalism, prohibiting globalist control, Keir Starmer is calling everyone in the world, or at least everyone in England, a racist. Believe me, there are worse things to be called. Let's have a look at Starmer's response to a journalist inquiring as to whether or not he regrets calling those who protested over Southport racist.
Chris from GB News.
Chris Hope, GB News. Prime Minister.
Going bad, isn't it, this press conference, by the way? Okay, Chris, GB News. Well, this won't be good.
What we know now about the terror link and how it's kept from the public, do you now regret blaming the far right for all those protests last summer? Was it a far right issue, or were some people entitled to be concerned and upset, not the rioters, of course?
Responsibility for the violence lies with them that perpetrated it. I was in Southport the day after these terrible murders. I was acknowledging and thanking the frontline police officers and ambulance who had been at the scene. You can imagine what they had been through. They were back at work the next day. They were saying it was just their job. I could see in their eyes the impact it had had on them, what they had to deal with, what they had to see, how they endured that. As I arrived back in London, those same officers were putting their riot gear on and having bricks thrown at them. Those same officers. I don't think anybody can justify that, nor should they attempt to do so.
Look at him trying to summons up sentimentality all too late now. Is it okay for Keir Starmer to summons up sentimentality? Imagine what the police and the ambulance people went through. Here's another thing to imagine. How do you feel the people of Southport and Britain at large feel about these rape gang stories? How do they feel that someone who had been monitored by the deep state, a rare example of someone being surveilled legitimately, how do they feel that that person should probably already have been under arrest before he went on to murder 3 children? There's something in the national psyche that cracks when children are murdered. When the murders are somewhat ideologically motivated and can't be dismissed, as they so often are, as a lone gunman or a lone lunatic or a lone wolf acting alone, but instead part of a problem that seems to be endemic across Britain. In short, the failure of their kind of globalist multiculturalism. We should revere, love and honour one another, but probably if you move to another country because you prefer it there to the country that you're in, having ideologies that are directly at odds or indeed loathe that nation are a problem. Does that mean that it's impossible to be a Muslim and happy in Britain? Of course it doesn't. Does that mean you couldn't be a Christian and live in Saudi Arabia or Turkey or wherever you might want to be a Christian, or indeed an atheist or whatever? Simply this: if you move to a place, you're moving to that place because it has certain qualities. Those qualities might be its traditions, its laws, its economic opportunities, its nature. But if you go there and then you hate it and you murder children from there, the ideological component is something that needs to be looked at, particularly when you house and context this within a spate of near epidemic child rape and a culture of rape gangs. This is a crisis in the United Kingdom, and it's a crisis that bureaucracy cannot contain nor control, because they don't have any ideology except for control. They've not got a vision for Britain or for fairness or for love or compassion or for God or for a way that we should all live. They don't have that. What they have is a demented yet unconscious drive to continually acquire power and control and facilitate the interests of globalist power through the leverage of that control. That's why patriotism and nationalism are serving as an early bulwark against globalism. That's why everyone's being called right-wing. That's why they're more interested in calling people racist than undertaking the reckoning that's required. That there is a crisis in the United Kingdom, and that crisis involves the government and the media and the judiciary. When you see those three interests working together, be concerned. You're being exploited, you're being lied to. And sadly, in this case, children are being murdered, and young women and even children are being beyond exploited, out and out raped. There's a crisis in Britain, and that crisis should claim the government. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and the chat. Remember, from Monday to Thursday, we are on Rumble live. Join us live for those streams. In particular, you might want to check out our show on Thursday, where Neil Oliver, that brilliant political reporter from the UK and cultural reporter, and Lara Logan, who's fantastic on the subject of sex trafficking, globalism, exploitation, right down to the slightly occultist aspects of it. You will love it. All talk about the issues of this week. Join us for that over on Rumble. In the meantime, if you can, please stay free. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.